utter brutality of how she was killed was among the worst I've ever seen as a crime reporter.
A brutal killing.
She tried to escape out of her bedroom window.
What happened to her in her house, that shouldn't happen to anybody.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
I think everyone assumed almost from the start that the killer knew the victim somehow.
He kind of had an infatuation with Kim Dorsey.
Based on all this information, his story's coming apart.
The truth will be revealed.
I just couldn't imagine the terror that she was experiencing. Her last words were, "Stop, you're killing me."
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. The gated communities of Jacksonville, Florida, are a haven of tranquility and affluence.
The area is absolutely gorgeous. You have, $500,000 homes. It has a small town feel. A lot of people know one another.
It's a very nice neighborhood, viewed as very safe. There's not a lot of crime there.
But on a quiet Sunday morning, all that is shattered.
Kim. Oh, you got him now.
Jacksonville, what's going?
Please send ambulance back.
Firefighter Derek Dorsey has just returned home from work to discover his wife Kim's motionless body.
Are you with her right now?
Yes, I am. Send rescue.
We are sending rescue. Is she awake?
No, she's not. I think she's dead.
He performed CPR on her. He's been working with the fire department for almost 20 years at this point, so he's seen a lot of things. He knows what to do, in an emergency. However, now the emergency is right in his bedroom.
You can actually hear kind of the waves of emotion. It was obvious to me that all that training and experience just kind of went out the door.
Okay, sir, tell me exactly what happened.
I don't know. She tried to commit suicide. Send rescue.
We are sending rescue. You have to tell me exactly what she did. What happened?
I don't know. She either cut herself or something. I can't see. I'm trying to figure the out.
After performing CPR for several minutes, Derek realizes it's too late.
It's a 607. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Lead investigator Larry Kuskowski and his team, along with Assistant State's Attorney London Kite, arrive at the scene.
The call itself was called in as a possible suicide. But the violence that was evident in the room, one person couldn't do this to themselves. There's a large amount of blood on the floor, on the walls. There's blood on the ceiling. You just knew there was, whatever happened here was very, very violent.
The scene just in and of itself was like, absolutely not, this is not a suicide. When the husband found his wife, he put the comforter over her body. So all I could see really was her foot and her arm. And then when the medical examiner got there, that's when they removed the comforter and exposed the brutality of what happened to her.
It's a tragic end to 38-year-old Kim Dorsey's life.
Kim Dorsey owned a business in the area, very well respected. She seemed like a wonderful person, and it seemed like she had an ideal marriage. people seem to have nothing but good things to say about her.
Well, why would anybody ever do something like this?
Investigators turned to her husband, Derek, to reconstruct the last 24 hours of Kim's life.
Derek told us he had gone to work the previous morning. The fire department works 24-hour shifts. When he comes home Sunday morning, shortly after 8 o'clock, he walks in the bedroom expecting to find his wife, in bed.
They had blackout curtains, so it was very dark in there.
He finds her on the floor at the foot of the bed. He goes, calls 911.
But by that point, Kim is already dead. And the team believes she had been for nearly 24 hours. Not far from Kim's body are the first clues to what happened.
There were plastic wire ties around Kim's ankles and in her wrists. Somebody tried to bind her up. I just figured there's probably a sexual assault here, based on what I saw. There was a broken pool cue on the floor. A gun was on the floor. There was a knife on the floor, all in the vicinity of her body. And there's bullet strikes in the wall and in the door frame in the bedroom. So if somebody was in the bedroom shooting out, did we know who shot? No, not yet. So there are a lot of things that needed to be explained.
Investigators fan out to examine the rest of the Dorseys' home.
Someone had gone through ransacking the kitchen, opened drawers, throwing stuff out of the drawers. Definitely someone looking for something. In the kitchen sink, there's 3 or 4 remotes in there and a keyboard that's part of this surround sound system, which was very odd. There was no damage to the front door that indicated that the door was forced open in any way. But I did notice something that was out of place. There was a ceramic dog statue by the front door, and it was tipped over. You have to take notice of things. During the course of the investigation, you are going over, inch by inch and foot by foot, just to make sure that you're covering everything.
They quickly come to their first conclusion.
The idea that some stranger would break into the house, tie someone up with zip ties, stab them, and beat them with a pool cue, that's just not the way it goes.
Kim Dorsey probably knew her attacker, or the attacker knew how to get into the home.
The simple fact is that you're much more likely to be killed by someone you know than by a stranger. And I think police understand that.
They need to drill down into Derek Dorsey's story.
Anytime a wife is murdered, the husband is a suspect. That's just a fact.
Derek, at this point, had been taken from the scene down to the detective division in downtown Jacksonville. After I walked the scene, I went downtown then to interview Derek.
Derek, I'm Larry Koskowski. It's difficult right now, a lot going on, but I need to talk to you, okay? I gotta get some information from you, okay?
I had him take me through the weekend. He told me on Friday night, Kim had left the house that evening for a couple hours to go do some shopping. They had stayed home Friday night, watched a movie. Derek was up early Saturday morning, and he left for work at about his usual time, right around 7, a little after 7 o'clock Saturday morning. Derek finished his shift on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. So when he's gone for that 24-hour period, his wife was home by herself. He had tried to call her on Saturday several times via cell phone. Derek worked at a fire station that was about as far north as you could go in the county. Cell phone coverage out there wasn't always the greatest, and the call wouldn't go through. He said that it was not unusual for him not to have those calls answered.
So far, Everything Derek is telling them adds up, with one exception.
Here's a guy that's, trained professional, and we walk in and recognize the scene. This is no suicide. How did he not see that? Is Derek involved?
The one thing that I remember about Derek Dorsey is that he was so transparent. I've never seen someone as transparent as him.
He opened up to me. He took a deep breath and sighed, and he said, well, there's a lot, going on with both of us. He told me that him and Kim basically had just a different kind of a relationship. It was somewhat of a swinging lifestyle. So it went from not really knowing to, okay, now we have maybe some other factors going on here. I wasn't expecting that. But Derek then added on at that, he said, that Kim had stopped doing it because her mother had died 3 or 4 years earlier. Part of her way of coping with her mother's death. She sought out professional medical help, and she was on some medication that caused her to put on some weight and, maybe not feel quite as attractive as she maybe had at one time. That was one of the reasons Derek thought that when he first came home, that she had committed suicide.
With Kim having stopped the swinging lifestyle, they need to find out if Derek had too.
He was very subdued. He was very matter of fact. So I finally asked him, I said, well, listen, is there anybody else?
Any issues, where either one of you stepping out, girlfriend on your behalf or boyfriend on hers? Okay, you got a girlfriend? Okay.
When an investigator learns that the partner of the deceased had been cheating on each other in the relationship, that creates a different mindset for the investigator. In domestic-type murders, infidelity is often part of the motive of someone's death.
The admission of infidelity has made Derek Dorsey the first suspect in his wife's murder.
As an investigator, okay, step back, be careful, make sure you're really asking a lot of good questions of Derek, because this might be your one chance to do it, or he's speaking freely. Get as much information as you can to find out what's going on here.
Okay, you got a girlfriend? Okay, and who's that? Well, we're gonna find out.
We have a weird relationship.
Who has you and your wife?
My wife, it's not a don't ask, don't tell thing, but
tell me about it.
She knows who I was when she married me.
Now you've added some more motive, maybe. Maybe he wants out of this marriage.
They seek to determine what he would have gained with Kim gone.
We always look for, is there a financial benefit to this person's death? Larry did ask him about whether he had any kind of insurance policy, and he didn't. It put him in a worse position to have Kim Dorsey die before him, because she was the main breadwinner.
But that doesn't mean Derek wasn't responsible.
We thought about the time frame, like how much time he would have to drive back and forth from the fire station to the house.
The distance between the two locations is 15 miles and would take almost an hour round trip.
The fire station where he worked was small. They pretty much could account for every single minute of his day. All the firefighters were like, look, if he left that place, then we would definitely know. The detectives verified with all the firefighters. They determined that he had like a lock-solid alibi. Even though Derek Dorsey initially was a suspect, we just couldn't find any kind of crack in his account.
Investigators then consider the other angle.
So, you have this girlfriend that he's talked about. Maybe whoever his girlfriend, lover, whatever you want to call that person, wants the current wife out of the picture. Obviously, now we want to talk to her.
In the event that it's a love triangle, that someone may feel, for example, that they've been wronged by somebody, that they were promised something. I'll leave my wife, I'll leave my husband for you. Someone being jilted can be a very strong factor for murder.
We were also looking into the girlfriend to see if she had any additional information that Derek Dorsey didn't tell us, and also to see if he had ever admitted anything to her.
Detective Kuskowski must determine if Derek's girlfriend shows up anywhere in the last 24 hours of the victim's life.
She was very forthcoming. She spilled her guts about the lifestyle, what everybody was into, and all that. I was able to determine that she was west of the city of Jacksonville, where she resides, and I was able to rule her out.
Hoping to uncover clues about Kim's attacker, investigators return to the crime scene.
Specialists such as blood spatter analysts may be called in certain circumstances where it's not obvious to the investigators what has happened and who is involved, and they need more information, more data to help them discern what exactly took place. It's important to try to figure out the puzzle of what was the sequence of events. Where did the struggle initiate and where did it end? Because it tells you the story of what happened. It tells you the timeline of what happened.
Forensic experts established that the first point of attack is next to the nightstand.
We have a lot of blood cast off on that left side of the bed. She was severely injured, and she stayed there for a significant period of time.
But the evidence then suggests Kim comes to and fights back.
She was able to get to where she kept her gun. It was a 5-shot revolver.
They wanted to know whether I thought it would be probative or helpful to have them string it, which means to show the actual bullet trajectory, and I told them absolutely yes. Kim Dorsey had to be down and low near her nightstand. She fired off 5 shots.
Shooting at somebody that maybe is standing in the doorway or coming back to the doorway.
The strings reveal that despite firing all 5 rounds, Kim misses her attacker.
Trying to explain 5 bullet holes, therefore 5 misses, there's a number of reasons. Fear is the #1 problem. People freeze. We don't know how we're going to react in a state of emergency until we're into it. And it's not surprising that your aim is the last thing you're able to control.
And then that's when he goes back into the room to finish her off. He continued to beat her with a pool cue to the point in which it broke. We actually had the pool cue given to an engineer, and it took a tremendous amount of force to break a pool cue like that, and that was broken on Kim's body. To finish things off, he made sure that he stabbed her in the neck.
The detailed analysis provides all new insights into the crime and the potential perpetrator.
The most telling weapon would have been that pool cue, which all of them were kept upstairs, and that's not a natural weapon for someone to say, yeah, I want to go kill this person, so I'm gonna grab a pool cue.
We were able to figure out that the wire ties that were found on Kim's wrist and ankle, it looked like they came from the office upstairs.
And the knife was from a set that were inside the kitchen.
These were all things that suggest that whoever committed this crime was familiar with the house.
A brutal killer who knew Kim well enough to gain entry into her home and where to find weapons. For investigators, it suggests someone close to the family.
Kim's autopsy had already been performed. We knew she had been sexually assaulted.
We had a foreign male DNA profile, so we knew that we were looking for a man.
Based on what Derek Dorsey had said with other people in the house with the swinging lifestyle, who knows who's been here? Is this somebody that had been there before, that came back knowing Derek wasn't home and wanted to maybe see Kim again? Who knows?
We were looking at all those different individuals to make sure that we either rule them in or rule them out.
Detective Koskowski looks to Derek to provide potential names.
Derek is a general contractor on the side. Some of the guys that Derek used in his contracting business actually lived in the Dorsey house at one time.
Derek Dorsey was basically going through an entire timeline of like kind of who was in and out of the house.
I have one guy that used to work with me, Elvin. Lance Kirkpatrick.
Lance Kirkpatrick had a drug problem. He had been friends with the Dorseys. He was just one of those people who you invite into your house for a weekend, and then 3 months later you'd be trying to get him out. And so he eventually got thrown out of their house.
But according to Derek, that weekend, Lance is on a shrimp boat out in the Atlantic. The second individual that Derek had talked about was a guy by the name of Joshua Veal. Derek had befriended Josh and gave him some work and trying to help him out. He's a young kid. Derek and Kim allowed Joshua to reside in their home, but they had a falling out, and eventually Joshua moved out.
But Derek says he was still hiring Josh for odd jobs and had been due to see him the morning he discovered Kim's body.
Sunday morning when he got off, Derek was going to pick up Joshua Veal. They had agreed to meet at a convenience store up on the north side of Jacksonville, basically to do some work for him.
Joshua Veal never showed up. Why wouldn't he show up for this meeting if he's going to get money and get paid?
He's familiar with the house. He's done some work in the past for the Dorseys. So Josh was number one at that point.
Police discover Veal has a criminal record, mostly for drug-related offenses.
And he had actually just been arrested earlier in that week leading up to the weekend Kim was murdered. So brought him down, put him in an interview room. I didn't tell him anything about a murder. I just introduced myself as a detective.
One of the techniques used is not to tell a loved one or someone close that the person you're asking about is in fact dead or been murdered. Then you drop the bombshell looking for the responses. Are they genuine? Are they fake?
Josh claims he'd been partying all weekend at his house, including the time detectives believe Kim was killed.
But you spent Friday night at the house?
Yeah.
Okay. You didn't go anywhere Friday night?
No.
Okay. All right. Saturday night, you get up?
we had drank Friday night, we had drank Saturday night.
He had been out Saturday night, and he just lazy, did not show up Sunday morning.
But when Larry mentions Kim's name, his attitude changes.
One of the things that struck me most about Joshua Veal's interview is that he kind of had a fascination or infatuation with Kim Dorsey, kind of like romantic interest. It was strange in that way.
My conversation with him was, when you lived with them, did you and Kim have anything going on, sexual? The way he answered it, it was a little kind of like he didn't, but if he coulda, he woulda.
How'd she look?
1 to 10. Would you ask me if I would hit it?
Sure.
8.
Joshua Veal's infatuation with Kim Dorsey has put him front and center in her murder investigation.
Have you ever had sex with her? Be honest with me.
No, I wish.
You wish?
So I started asking him, if he had talked to Kim recently, and he had. And then I finally said, well, did you hear what happened to her? He's like, no, what are you talking about?
She's dead.
Oh, don't tell me that, man.
just a flow of emotions. I mean, you would think that it was, in fact, his mom that was murdered, and he just couldn't deal with it.
You know anybody that might want to hurt her?
No. No, that was like a mom to me, man. Oh, please.
It was very authentic, and so it kind of X'd him off of my list. But still, you know, they went through and they got his DNA just to make sure that he was not, in fact, involved in the crime. It was negative. He was excluded as a contributor to the DNA.
Derek provides police with additional names of people familiar with his home.
Everybody we talked to, they all gave us the sample, and everyone kept coming back negative, negative, negative.
So Detective Kuskowski takes a new approach.
I want to do a walkthrough of the house with Derek and let him point out anything that maybe we missed, ask some questions about some things that we found before we turn the house back over to him. Because once we're done, we're done. When we initially walked the scene in the kitchen, we found 3 or 4 remotes in the sink. It's part of the surround sound system, which was very odd. Somebody had run water over the remotes. My partner asked him, hey, show us how to turn on the TV here in the living room. So Derek was able to turn the TV on, and right away, a pornographic movie starts to play. We're like, wow. And Derek loses it. He's like, that's not mine. Whoever did this, dropping expletives, whoever did this, they watched that. That is not my movie. My belief was that whoever committed the murder at some point sat down and watched this movie.
The discovery points to another man Derek says had recently been to the house.
They were having problems, I think, with the remote or something with their TV system.
Friday in the afternoon, they had a gentleman come over from a sound company that made some adjustments to the surround sound of his entertainment system.
The service call occurred approximately 12 hours before Kim was killed.
So the sound guy was in our crosshairs. He's the guy that knows how to run the system. He worked on the system and wire all these things in the sink. He's thinking in his mind, he puts it in the sink and runs water over it. Does it wash away any DNA or anything like that?
We didn't know if something happened between him and Kim where he maybe became infatuated with her or came back to the house.
Detectives quickly track him down.
So we met with the sound guy. He said, yeah, I went out on Friday night to work on the system. He said it wasn't unusual. He said, Derek's had me at this house before. He had another house that I used to go to and handle his affairs there with the sound system. We noticed when we were sitting there, the sound guy had some cuts on his hands. So, we keyed in on those. Were they the results of scratches that, were inflicted in a struggle with another person? We actually asked him about them, and he's like, well, I'm working with wire all the time, and I run it, up in attics, and so, my hands are always cut up.
The technician is adamant he never returned to the house.
We told him what had happened. He wasn't even aware of it, and this was 2 or 3 days after Kim's body was found, so he hadn't even seen anything on the news. Of course, I asked him, if he would volunteer a DNA sample, and he readily, hey, whatever you need. When I walked out of the interview with him, I said, I don't think so.
The DNA test confirms this instinct. The unsolved crime now begins to weigh heavily on the team.
Part of it was we had been up so long at this point, and we had taken samples from so many people. As an investigator and working with the evidence technicians, even if it takes you to a dead end, we need to go down that road, and we need to look at everything. We owe it to Kim, or any victim, that we, thoroughly investigate the entire case.
Then, they get the break they've been looking for.
There was a crime analyst that caught like a common, everyday type of police report on a temporary and unauthorized use of a vehicle.
It's kind of a fancy way of saying the car was stolen, but you let the person take it.
The theft took place just 17 hours before the murder.
So the girl that reported the car stolen made the police report. They took all of her information and, of course, the information of the person who she let use the car, who never returned the car, which was Lance Kirkpatrick.
Lance Kirkpatrick's name came up early on in the investigation when Derek Dorsey was basically going through and kind of who was in and out of the house. During the initial interview with Derek Dorsey, he calls him LJ, and I remember these words very clear. He was like, absolutely not. He would take a bullet for Kim.
Why are you so certain about him?
I just know him long enough. Something like that, no. I think we respected him too much.
Lance is still supposed to be on the shrimp boat. Nothing's adding up now.
That basically put Lance Kirkpatrick back on the map.
A stolen car report forces a familiar name back into focus: Lance Kirkpatrick.
I talked to the girl who reported the vehicle stolen. She laid out basically the activities of her on that Friday night. They were at his apartment on the south side with Lance and some other folks that were there. And Lance had agreed to go out to buy some drugs. And she lets him take the truck. We're talking early Saturday morning now.
And so that's when Lance Kirkpatrick leaves, never to return with that vehicle.
Detectives must determine if the car ever came close to the Dorsey home.
When the police respond to the scene, part of patrol's responsibility was a neighborhood canvass. So in the initial canvass, one of the patrol officers had talked to a neighbor of the Dorseys that said he had seen a blue small SUV out there that day.
This fits the description of the car Kirkpatrick stole.
Fast forward a few days, we got the information about this truck. One of the other mental notes was that there was a surveillance camera at the gate to the community. So, hey, let's go back and look at the video again. Or if it's working, we should have a video of the truck, which we did.
The footage places the SUV directly on the timeline at 6:30 a.m., the morning of the murder.
As soon as the police saw that surveillance video, Lance Kirkpatrick became the #1 suspect.
To locate him, they turned to the woman whose car he stole.
And I said, well, listen, I'm really looking for Lance. Well, she goes, well, I don't know where he is, but I know where a friend of his is named Brian Kiefer. I said, well, I'd like to talk to Brian. So took him into custody and talked to him about basically his activities and then about Lance Kirkpatrick.
Investigators learned that Brian was at the same house party when the SUV disappeared.
Brian Kiefer says he goes on a night-long taxi ride trying to figure out where Lance Kirkpatrick is because he's one of the ones that let Lance use the car. So he was basically guilty by association. He can't find him, only to find him the following day. He says that Lance looks disheveled. He notices that he has an injury on one of his hands.
What Brian then reveals is completely unexpected.
He tells me that he murdered somebody and is pretty much is going to prison, and there's nothing that can be done about it.
He just said it was a beating. He didn't describe it as we know it to be, which was absolutely horrific and violent.
There are a number of reasons why people, quote, confess to a crime. Primarily, we see it as a guilt complex. People can't wear it, they can't hide it, they can't keep it in. That's the #1 reason why people talk. #2 might be alcohol-fueled or drug-fueled, but then you're only getting a part of a story, as a rule. Usually, if a person's hell-bent to tell a friend of theirs, I did this dastardly deed, they're going to tell them some of the details of the murder itself, but not all of it.
I don't know whether he hit her with that pool stick but he kind of emphasized swinging the pool stick.
Okay.
And then he emphasized being shot at 5 times.
And he says, well, you know, Lance told me that he kept waiting for the 6th shot and it never came. But it was a 5-shot revolver.
But when he heard the window open, he thought the lady was going out through the window. So he ran in there and beat her with his hand and then stabbed her.
It is also through Brian Kiefer that we get Kim Dorsey's last words.
What does he say? Does he say that she was dead, or does he say anything about that?
He said the lady was saying, "Stop. You're killing me."
The detail Brian provides about his friend's actions is abnormally specific.
And it was information that only somebody that was there would have known. So Brian is, immersed himself in the middle of a homicide potentially based on all this information. He's saying Lance did it. Well, how do I know Brian didn't do it?
Brian Kiefer claims he knows who killed Kim Dorsey. But there's only one way to confirm if he's telling the truth. Find Lance Kirkpatrick.
Brian tells us last he saw Lance was at Brian's apartment on the south side of Jacksonville. So we had our law enforcement go over there and pay that apartment a visit. And they found Lance hiding in the attic.
The man once thought to be at sea finally sits down with Detective Koskowski.
All right. Look, Lance, have a seat over there, okay? This will make it a little bit easier.
He was calm, so I was trying to set the stage, just getting to know Lance a little bit more.
Again, careful not to mention Kim's murder.
You and Derek get along pretty well.
Oh, we get along great.
And he's trying to be nonchalant, oh, what are you talking about?
When's the last time you were over at Derek's house?
I went over there a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago.
Do you remember what day it was that you went over there and did that?
Yeah, it was Georgia, Florida.
Georgia, Florida. So
it was Georgia, Florida. It was right before the game.
So did you go inside then let yourself in?
No.
Florida, Georgia is sort of the secular holiday of Jacksonville. Everything shuts down for that weekend.
The game was on Saturday, the day of the murder. Lance has been around long enough with Derek, worked around Derek long enough, he knows the schedule too. Derek is gone for that 24-hour period. His wife was home by herself.
How about you and Kim?
We get along fine.
Okay, you ever had any problems with her?
Mm-mm.
No, nothing like that? Okay. All right.
No, pretty much get along with everybody.
Pretty along, okay. What if I told you I didn't believe all your story?
On what story?
Well...
On what part of the story don't you believe?
The next follow-up question he invoked, and he asked for an attorney, and at that point, we had to stop the interview.
I'm not saying anything else.
Okay. Good luck to you.
With Kirkpatrick refusing to cooperate, investigators must find another way to prove he was inside the house that day.
Lance was smart enough to know when to shut up that night. But at this point, when we weren't talking to Lance, we already had DNA foreign to Kim on her body.
The sheriff's office went about getting DNA from Lance Kirkpatrick's father.
The similarity is overwhelming.
In the quintillion, sextillion, it's like huge numbers, like 2 and 3 times the number of people on Earth. The fact that we had really significant DNA and the fact that he denied going in there was a critical lie that we were able to say, yeah, we got our man.
This not only confirms Kirkpatrick as the killer, but also clears the one remaining suspect, Brian Kiefer. For detectives, Kirkpatrick's movements in the hours before the murder suggest he had a sinister plan in mind.
Lance had, gone out that Friday night with somebody else's car to buy drugs and didn't come back with what he was supposed to come back with. He left to try to go make things right. The one thing he knows is the Dorseys. And he knows how to get into that community. He knows how to get into the house. Lance has been around long enough with Derek, worked around Derek long enough. He knows the schedule. Derek's gone for that 24-hour period. His wife was home by herself. Lance knows that. I think he sat across the street, waited for Derek to leave to go to work that morning. I think shortly thereafter, he went over to the house, initially looked under that dog for the key, let himself in with the key.
That's probably when Kim Dorsey heard him.
He basically lit into her physically, and it just went downhill from there.
The turmoil that she was going through, just a desperate picture of a woman trying to escape. I just couldn't imagine like the terror that she was experiencing.
Despite overwhelming evidence, Lance Kirkpatrick pleads not guilty.
Lance's version was that he and Kim Dorsey were lovers, and that he had gone to her house to have sex with her, and that after they had sex, Kim Dorsey started getting mad at him because he had helped set her husband up with other women, and that enraged Kim Dorsey, and she picked up a gun and started firing at him in a rage. And that everything that happened afterwards was him basically trying to fight back in self-defense.
Self-defense is I punch you and I try to get away from you. I don't beat you with a pool cue till I break the pool cue and half stab you in the neck and tie you up. That's not self-defense. That's a bunch of nonsense.
The jury finds him guilty of first-degree murder and rape. He's sentenced to life without parole. He remains eligible for appeal.
Life without parole is a long time to sit there. Ultimately, it's about Kim here. What happened to her in her house, that shouldn't happen to anybody.
I felt like I did Kim Dorsey justice. It's always a mixed feeling having to put all those facts and evidence out in front of their family, but now they know what happened to her and they knew that she was a fighter. I think that meant a lot to them, that she didn't go quietly. She fought with every cell in her body.
This type of violence inflicted, there's a certain level of depravity involved.
A brutal killing.
She's having a wonderful weekend with her family, then she's gone. Her life here on Earth was over.
I try not to think about how she died.
Bad things happen to good people, unfortunately.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
Was this a neighbor? Was it a coworker? Was it an ex-boyfriend? We weren't sure exactly what happened.
He was telling them that he was on the run and had murdered a woman in Florida.
If he had a clearer view of her home, he would have known that she lived alone.
The truth will be revealed.
My gut was telling me that this was the person who murdered Bernardet Myers.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Sunshine City. That's how locals describe St. Petersburg, Florida.
I think what makes the whole area great here is the fact of the beautiful beaches that we have and the weather. You can do pretty much what you want year-round here in Pinellas County.
It's really considered a really hip and cool place to be nowadays. You get a lot of what I refer to as paradise people that come down for an easy life.
But wherever you have sunshine, you also have shadows.
The Loma neighborhood definitely had seen its better days.
It's an area where it's not unusual to see transients moving in and out.
Here, the home of Bernardet Myers stands out.
Bernadette's home was the nicest one on the block. And she cared a lot about her home, and you could see it.
Bernadette did not show up for work that day, and Bernadette did not answer her phone and did not return any phone calls that had been previously left for her. So one of her friends decided to drive over to Bernadette's house, and she looked in through the kitchen windows, and she was able to see what to her appeared to be something red, possibly blood, on the floor in the kitchen.
Detectives Judy Vauvin and Larry Nelvin arrive on scene within minutes.
We could see large amounts of blood in the kitchen. We could see the drag marks that went from the kitchen dining room area into the bedroom.
And going into the master bedroom, we found Bernadette Myers face down on the floor with a large amount of blood, dried around her head. Her hands were behind her back, duct tape around the wrist, and she had 2 large zip ties put around her neck, and they were cinched up as tight as they could possibly be. Her cause of death was the ligature strangulation. The blunt force trauma to her head was secondary to the asphyxiation. That tells you that Bernadette Myers was alive when those zip ties were put on her neck and cinched up, and when she was drugged into her room and left there.
That was certainly the first murder investigation that I worked at. The zip ties were utilized as an instrument of death. The physicality of it itself was extremely brutal.
Detectives now face the difficult task of breaking the news to loved ones.
Making a death notification to a family member is a very hard thing to do. You're trying to establish whatever you can about your victim from these people that you just shattered and shook up their life.
I remember the moment that they told us. It was just disbelief. It was just a whirlwind of not knowing what took place or what happened. The weekend before she passed away, we were all together in Ocala. It was the entire family, Sunday morning. We were all sitting around. Everybody just laughed and just joked around, and really that was the atmosphere that we had. One of the last pictures that were taken of her, she was holding her great niece and her great nephew. It's a loving moment. It struck your heart. You know, she's there, she's having a wonderful weekend with her family, and then she's gone. Her life here on earth was over.
She had a son. She had a lot of friends and relatives that she would see on a pretty regular basis.
She was a good family member. She was a good friend.
Monday, I called her because we would always talk about the weekend, and we would laugh and joke and talk about the things that had happened. I called and left her a message. And because of the time frame, I sometimes wonder when that message was being heard.
We spoke to ex-boyfriends, we spoke to co-workers, we spoke to anyone and everyone that could lead us down the road to the killer. We weren't able to find anyone that had anything bad to say about her, or anyone certainly that had threatened her in any way.
Bad things happen to good people, unfortunately.
Determined to fill in the last 24 hours of her life, police interview Bernadette's colleague, who first spotted the blood.
Her friend was very upset, very emotional, but she provided us a lot of good information to help build a timeline. Bernadette worked at Honeywell. They work on parts for the military as well as stuff for the space program. She was an intelligent person, a hard worker. She was an early riser, got to work early, left work, and she was done for the day. We learned that on the Monday, she left work around 2:30 or 3. She had a doctor's appointment, and we know she made it there. We knew that she had a problem with one of her tires. She went to an auto parts store at around 4:30. She was there for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then she left. Sometime around 5 o'clock is most likely when she got home.
Clues from the scene suggest she met her killer moments afterwards.
There was like a bag of oranges that were out on the table. Bernadette would have put those away. I mean, that's not something she would leave out. She was very neat, which would imply that she was interrupted in whatever she did as soon as she got home.
Due to the fact that she had not returned any calls and put her groceries away or changed her clothes, we feel that she was murdered somewhere between 5 and 7 o'clock at the latest on Monday.
There was no kicked-in door, there were no screens missing, there were no broken windows. We did think perhaps that our perpetrator was someone that she knew or someone that was familiar with her home. We know that just based on the brutality at the scene, that more than likely it was going to be a man.
There was no DNA of interest found at the scene. And by that I mean they would have found, of course, Bernadette's DNA, which as you would expect.
Not one fingerprint, but one of the forensic examiners at the scene, who was still in the middle of processing, was able to develop a bloody shoe impression on the floor that they were able to enhance using chemicals. We knew it wasn't Bernadette's. Her shoes were on the kitchen floor, and she was knocked out of them. So we felt very strong that this was going to be the bloody shoe impression from the murderer.
The actual impression was believed to be some type of tennis shoe, and the size between 9 and 11.
Her vehicle was not in the garage. So of course, what I'm going to surmise from that is that whoever murdered her stole her car. Did they steal it because they wanted the car, or did they steal it because they thought it was the best way to get away from that location without being seen? It seemed pretty organized. He was either more prepared than your normal person, or he was able to react somewhat calm after he had done this to figure out how he's going to get out of there. We're looking for anybody and everybody that's associated with Bernadette, that's associated with the area, that would have any reason to be there. My first instinct was this was something that was sexually motivated.
Some of her underwear apparently had been taken out of her dresser, which could be Bernadette doing her laundry, or it could be a fetish, type sex aspect to it.
We have a sexual predator offender tracking unit here at the sheriff's office. They track all the locations of all the sex offenders and sex predators, and they're required to check in and register with them.
The investigators would automatically search the database for any persons in the area that are sexual predators. They would be persons of interest to speak to as soon as possible.
There is one name at the top of their list.
Leo Borobi was brought to our attention by the Sexual Predator Unit. He was a convicted sexual predator who had committed a violent rape.
He lived within around a mile of Bernadette Myers. His offenses had to do with adult women.
There's some leopards out there with spots on that don't change.
So, of course, we wanted to look into him, try to find out where he might have been on the day that Bernadette was murdered.
The lead suspect in Bernadette Myers' homicide is a convicted sex offender.
So we wanted to find him and talk with him to try and establish a timeline.
If somebody is determined by police to have a record for sexual assault, especially if it's a record for violence and sexual assault, they are examined more thoroughly by police to see if they're capable of committing an even worse assault, and in this case, that would be murder.
Police obtained Borobi's address from the offender tracking unit.
In my being, I knew he was a dirtbag. When we spoke to Mr. Borobi, he had recently injured himself.
He said he had suffered a broken foot previously and had to use the crutches to get around on. I think it would have been very hard for somebody that truly has to use crutches to be able to do what was done to Bernadette. But we still wanted to make every effort to make sure he wasn't just using that as a crutch. We were able to timeline his injury out by talking to his place of employment, and they were able to confirm with us that he had had this injury prior to Bernadette's murder.
He got out of work that afternoon at 3:30, and he had to wait for a ride. So as far as the timeline goes, he wouldn't have been able to make it from where he was to Bernadette's house to commit the murder because of the physical injury.
To be certain, detectives turned to the forensic evidence.
When we got the autopsy results, it was determined that there was no sexual assault to Bernadette Myers. So all of that was against Leo Borobi being involved in this. We were able to rule him out as being a suspect in this homicide. Now that we knew that she was not the victim of a sexual assault, obviously the person went through something in her room and was searching for something.
Detective Nalvin and I invited Michelle and Christopher, that's Bernadette's niece and her son, to come to the house to hopefully be able to assist us. As hard as it was, we were hoping that they were going to be able to give us some key information in regards to the items that were missing, that we couldn't recognize as being missing because we had never been in that home before.
Everything had its place at Aunt Bernadette's house. Bernadette kept a very, very nice house. You could eat off her floor.
It was very emotional for them. It was extremely emotional. But they put their grief aside, and they were very focused on helping us find the killer.
At first, they really couldn't tell if anything was missing until her son said, I think that my mom had a wooden jewelry box on her dresser top.
There was several items of jewelry that she kept in that jewelry box.
Some items that they said were very unique, and that's what we kind of focused in on at that point in time.
Christopher drew pictures of the jewelry for us, but also Michelle, her niece, brought in a photograph of Bernadette from the family gathering that happened in Ocala the weekend before her murder. Bernadette was wearing a two-tone Anne Klein watch in the photograph, and it was on her wrist. And that was a watch that we did not find at the crime scene.
If you can identify property that's been stolen from a residence, it's a very valuable lead for the police because you can trace back who possessed that property to prove that the suspect was in the house.
That kind of explained potentially the undergarments that were on the bed and on the floor. We felt that the person went through the drawers looking for more jewelry or money or something of value. Her house was almost like a little bit of an oasis in the middle of this area. So people might think that this person, because they take care of their house, has money or has valuables inside of there. There's all kinds of people going by that residence all the time. It's a very heavily traveled road. So you start thinking, was somebody staking out her residence?
Investigators focus on the area surrounding Bernadette's house, looking for anything out of the ordinary.
We received a phone call from my sergeant at the time, who was out in an alley that runs behind Bernadette Meyer's house. And he said he was with an individual and that we needed to come meet with them. And that's when we first encountered Lee Davey. Lee Davey happened to be walking down the alley as my sergeant was walking down the alley, and he sees Lee approaching him, holding in his hand about a 34 to 36 inch long zip tie.
Davey is also found walking in the alley at the same time of day Bernadette was killed.
So the proximity is there, he's got the zip tie, and he certainly looks like he would be a strong enough individual that could have exerted the amount of violence on Bernadette.
He was a person of interest to us, a very strong person of interest.
In my mind, I'm thinking, this could be our killer.
Detectives have identified a man named Lee Davey, found carrying zip ties near Bernadette Meyer's house.
Of course, he knows who she is because he sits at the bus stop across from her house. He lives across the street. He walks the alley.
So, of course, we're assessing him. We're looking at his feet. Does he wear the same size tennis shoes? His mannerism? Is he perspiring?
He brought us over to his apartment that he lived in, let us search through his whole entire apartment, let us look at all his shoes.
He actually was cooperative with us. But sometimes that's not unusual because sometimes the bad guys think they're going to outsmart you.
Lee claims to have been at work in the time frame Bernadette was killed.
People will lie. Very, very dangerous to accept at face value that what you're being told is entirely the truth. Your job is to take the information, try to corroborate what you're being told.
He didn't have a violent history, so there was no motive there.
His shoe size was smaller than that we were looking for, that the killer had left behind.
And there was nothing that tied him to Bernadette.
His alibi also checks out.
The zip tie, he indicates that he found it near the bus station down in St. Pete, which is a distance away, and he grabbed it and just walked home with it. So for his case, I think it's a matter of timing. Bad timing for him to be walking down the alley carrying a zip tie.
When you have a person of interest that you believe could have committed this crime, you are putting all your efforts into that. And then once it gets to the point that you are able to confirm that this person, in fact, was not the killer, it's a little disappointing. But that's the truth of it. Word had spread in the neighborhood because of the crime scene tape being there. Word had spread at her job. So people were calling in as well and giving us information, giving us leads. There was a phone call from a woman named Sunshine. Sunshine was very well known in the law enforcement community in the Lellman area. She was very familiar with the streets because at times she lived on them. She had had some run-ins with the law herself. So we certainly knew exactly who she was. And she called in and provided us some information that she'd seen a black male in the alley right before the time of Bernadette's death.
She also said she saw the same person run through Bernadette's yard and then saw that person at a convenience store down the street later. So we went out and met with that convenience store. But there's no surveillance footage because their equipment's not working.
They were panning for gold there, just, you know, sifting through everything, trying to figure out where's this going to take us. When you really have nothing, you're just searching, you know, one of the things you'd say, well, is anybody doing burglaries around that time frame? You start looking for any creep-in burglaries or people are at home, because the vast majority of home burglaries, there's nobody at home. And burglars don't want to break into people's houses when people are there.
It led us to Curtis Bryant.
He became a person of interest because, you know, that was kind of his MO, going to people's houses in that area and breaking in while they were there.
Bryant's description matches that of the man seen by Sunshine near Bernadette's house.
In the process of finding Curtis Bryant, he was arrested on a burglary charge.
He broke into a residence while somebody was home, and it happened to be a female, an adult female, in close proximity to Bernadette's residence, within 8 blocks, and they were also in a stolen car.
So when Detective Nalvin and I had the opportunity to interview him about Bernadette's death, he was actually in custody. Unfortunately, that day, Mr. Bryant lacked a moral compass.
He listened to us talk, but he refused to answer specific questions, and at one point he ended up telling us he didn't want to talk anymore.
If I'm his lawyer, the first thing I tell him to do is, you do not talk to the police, ever. And if you do, you're an idiot. Because anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
They search Bryant's house, hoping to uncover evidence linking him to Bernadette's murder.
He lived in a little room inside of a garage and paid rent there. And we searched around in the garage.
We were looking for anything that may have been taken from the murder scene or brought to the murder scene.
We found duct tape. We found some decent length zip ties, pretty close to the length of the ones that we had on Bernadette Myers. However, the zip ties was a different manufacturer. The duct tape had a different grain and texture to it. We collected his shoes. His shoe size did not appear to fit with the size of the impression that we had. Nothing was tying him to her. Nothing was tying him to the scene.
Bryant looks set to be ruled out when police make an important discovery.
When we found Bernadette's car, it was at a local auto parts store right around the corner from Bernadette's. That was somewhat exciting to hear. Finding the car where it was in such close proximity, it kind of supported the theory that we had that the person got in the car to get away from her residence without being seen.
They look for physical evidence that places him in the vehicle.
We were hoping we'd get lucky and get DNA from the suspect. We had it towed back to our forensic lab, and it was processed. They were able to recover blood from the top of the steering wheel, from the gear shifter. They recovered it from the armrest. We had it submitted to the crime lab in hopes of it belonging to the suspect. However, all of that came back to Bernadette Myers. It's very deflating every time you're sending something off that you feel has a good potential of having DNA associated to the suspect, and it's coming back to your victim.
Their final hope in connecting Bryant to Bernadette lies with the timeline.
At that point in time, when Bernadette was murdered, Curtis worked for a seawall construction company, and we were able to get in touch with his boss, and we were able to confirm that he was at work and what time they worked till that day, which would have made it impossible for him to make it from where he was to Bernadette's for that.
Detectives now worry about the case growing cold.
Morale was kind of stretched, but you keep pushing ahead. You know, you have a victim that you want to find justice for her, and you have family members.
I mostly remember how I always felt they were going to catch the person that did this. I really, really felt strongly that they were going to do that. I don't think they turned it off ever. I think that they carried the weight of this case until it was done. So we were able to really put our grief aside and put all our faith in them.
Convinced Bernadette's murder was a well-planned crime of opportunity, police broadened their neighborhood search, determined to identify anything unusual from her final 24 hours.
In Bernadette's case, what made it unique and somewhat difficult was the fact that it was a transient area. It's a lot of people coming and going. We went back out again to do some more canvassing, and there was a decent-sized auto dealership right at the end of Bernadette Street. We talked to an employee, and she had some very good information for us. Going back to Monday, the day that we know Bernadette was murdered, she was parked across the street on the north side of the road, and at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she saw an individual standing next to a van that was parked next to her car. 30-year-old white male, 5'10", brown hair. She got in her car and she left. She came back about 45 minutes later. And when she came back, the van was still there.
And the interesting thing is that how he was parked, if he looked down the street, he could see Bernadette's home.
It was in direct sight of Bernadette's residence, for the front door and the driveway and most of her yard. I thought, great, maybe this person was looking that direction and could remember seeing something happen at Bernadette's residence. The individual was now seated inside the van, and as she got out, he made a comment to her without her even saying a word to him. "I'm waiting to meet somebody." He volunteers that to her, which she thought was kind of weird. And she goes into work. And about 15 minutes later, which would now be about 5 o'clock, she goes to leave for the day. He's still there. I asked her if there's anything that stood out about the van, and she remembered that it had a magnet on the side of the van from a local painting company.
This was something certainly that we had to follow up on. Who was he? Was there a line from him to Bernadette? Was this someone that Bernadette knew? Because of the business name on the side of the van, we knew where we were going to go next. And we were going to find out who was this person in this van.
Investigators on the Bernadette Myers case worked to track down a mystery man seen outside her home on the day of the murder.
So we went and found the owner of the painting company. And the owner is very good friends of Bernadette Myers. So that struck a chord. He informed us that he himself had painted the inside her residence about 4 years prior. And then 3 years ago, the outside of her residence was painted by 2 of his workers. One of them who was currently incarcerated in prison, and the other one was named Charles Hall.
Detectives bring Halm in for an interview.
He told me and confirmed that he did paint her house 3-4 years ago, as he remembered it. Said it took about a week to paint it. He kind of alluded that they were kind of friendly when he painted her house, that she would leave her doors unlocked so they could use the restroom. So I asked him if he had been by there recently. And he said no. And I said, well, you sure? Sure you wouldn't have been somewhere around there to meet somebody? And he kind of said, oh, yeah, I was. He kind of committed to parking in the same area that he was observed in.
He reluctantly admitted that he was there, knowing that there was probably a witness that saw him there.
I asked him for his help to see if he saw anybody over there, and he said, yeah, I could see right to her house, but no, I didn't see anybody. He was thinking out loud at this point to himself, who was I there to meet? Who was it? And he was looking up into the ceiling and looking left and looking right, and he kind of just looked over at us and said, I don't know, beats me. I can't remember who it was. He parked in a spot, for an hour. and waited to meet somebody, but can't remember who he was going to meet. I didn't believe him.
We did notice during the course of the interview that Mr. Holmes' shoe size looked like it could have been the shoe size that we were looking for, but there was no real evidence to hold him.
At that point in time, you know, I'd gotten information from him that I could follow up on, and I sent him on his way, and asking him to call me when he thinks of who this person, alleged person, was that he was supposed to meet. We put our surveillance team on him to establish where he's going and coming and who he's associating with so we can start talking to them.
When you're a seasoned investigator and you have to allow them to go, it's gut-wrenching. Not everyone can work homicide. It's very demanding, and it can be incredibly stressful. You have to be able to shift gears very quickly, and you have to have a really strong belief in the law and in justice.
As they begin the follow-up on Holm, the investigation takes a bizarre turn.
There was bulletins that were put out about the circumstances of her death to other law enforcement agencies.
We get a call from Alma Police Department in Arkansas about an individual who they called a hitchhiker that had been dropped off by some people because he was telling them that he was on the run and had murdered a woman in Florida. When law enforcement in Arkansas had contact with him, in going through the stuff, he had some zip ties.
It's a coincidence they can't ignore. So they work towards linking the man to Bernardet.
By going through all these different reports and different associates surrounding this individual, we are able to see at one point in time that a girlfriend of his that lived almost on the same block as Bernadette Myers.
They discover an incident report revealing the hitchhiker had a violent past.
He had been involved in a shooting and a kidnapping, so to speak, with an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife. So you see that there's a violent tendency from this unstable person. And then you have the fact that he's saying he murdered a woman in Florida. We are doing everything we can to try and establish where he's been for this time, because he wasn't with the people that he was hitchhiking with anymore, and law enforcement had already sent him on his way, and now he was in the wind. It was very frustrating.
They worked to place their new suspect in Bernadette's neighborhood at the time she was killed.
If you can get the timeline right, you can prove or break the suspect's alibi.
We found evidence he was in some facility in Tennessee during the time frame of Bernadette's murder. There was nothing put in him in this area recently. As this investigation went on, it seemed that everybody we came into contact with now all of a sudden is either carrying a zip tie or has them in their garage. None of them were the size of the ones that we found on Bernadette. You want tips to come in, but it depends. Sometimes you get a lot that don't lead you anywhere. Some are good, but you can't pick and choose which ones you get, so you have to work all of them.
The investigation gains new traction when the surveillance team makes an important discovery about painter Charles Holm.
We learned that he was a frequent pawner. A lot of his pawn activity was tools and construction equipment, things of that nature. In Florida, when you pawn anything, you're required to, 1, provide a photo ID, and 2, you're required to provide a thumbprint. If we have any suspicion that could have been a robbery or burglary, you're going to look for somebody pawning this stuff to get the money for it.
Detective Nelvin checks Holmes' most recent pawn activity.
After Bernadette Myers' murder, he pawned some women's jewelry.
We traveled to the pawn shops, and based on the drawings by Christopher, we were able to determine that there were several items pawned by Mr. Holm that belonged to Bernadette. These items were sent to the lab for a DNA test.
on the pink coral ring was our one piece of DNA evidence that belonged to Bernadette Myers, which proved that that was her ring. And the concerning part about it is that we're finding that in one particular transaction, he was pawning this before we'd even found her body inside her house on Tuesday.
That was a true breaking point.
With the circumstantial evidence mounting against Charles Halm, detectives are able to subpoena more of his records from the day of the murder.
We got his phone records, and we're able to see what I would describe as a frantic attempt to get a hold of a friend of his named Gary.
It shows a flurry of phone calls, like I think it's 6:20 or 6:22 that evening.
The calls fall right within the time frame of Bernadette's murder, making Gary their next priority.
Gary told us that he was friends with Charles Halm, and he also told us that he had gotten some jewelry from Charles. He also told us that his wife had some of the jewelry. So at that point in time, we go find his wife, Kimber. As I looked at the watch that she's wearing on her wrist, immediately flashed this picture that the family had provided to me of when Bernadette was in Ocala one day before she was murdered.
She was actually wearing Bernadette's watch. There's a part of me that thought that, there was some divine intervention happening there. That's one of those moments that you pray for.
I think the stars just aligned with us having the weekend together, and it was just such a beautiful weekend, but that we had the picture of the watch.
As Charles Halm is charged with first-degree murder, detectives can now identify the critical details from Bernadette's final 24 hours and the events that drew her ever closer to a desperate killer.
The day before, Bernadette had been with her son visiting some relatives in Ocala.
Bernadette came home Sunday evening. She went to work on Monday.
She stopped a couple places on her way home for errands.
Charles Halm sat in his van for an hour waiting for her to get home. He knows that she has a nice house. He knows where she works. So he knows that she's more well off than most people in that area.
Now, whether when he was watching her house, his plan was to kill her, it's possible. He was doing a lot of drugs at that time. Heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine.
She went home that night expecting to have a quiet evening. She put her things down, and Mr. Halm was at the back door. And she probably answered it. She was a friendly person. And she recognized him.
And he probably thought he might be able to smooth talk her into getting some money. But she will tell people her mind. Probably told him to pack sand. He was upset. That's when he attacks her.
He repeatedly struck her in the back of the head with some type of blunt weapon. And he continued to strike her until she went down. To make sure that she was not going to be on this earth any longer, then he took zip ties and he put them around her neck and used those zip ties to drag her body from the kitchen area into her bedroom, where he left her face down with her head in a pool of blood.
He was panicked at some point because he was trying to reach out to his friend Gary at that point in time, frantically. He then used the idea of going through her garage to get in her car to leave without being seen, to go park down the street, to be able to walk back to his van that he was in, and then drive away. Then, the following day, Charles Halm pawned jewelry that belonged to Bernadette Myers 3 hours before we found her. Finding the pawn transaction that's done before her body's found with the jewelry that we know is hers, and then finding this watch that she was wearing not even 24 hours before she was murdered, to me was a huge moment.
He probably looked at it as she could be an easy target as far as that goes. And so in that regard, it's not random. It's random from the standpoint that she did nothing to encourage this. And that's the scary part. You know, there truly are evil people out there that prey on innocent folks.
Ultimately, Charles Halm was convicted of first-degree murder for killing Bernadette Myers. He's serving life with no chance of parole. You're talking about a couple $100 ultimately. A couple highs is what he got out of this. Murdered her brutally. To think about somebody going through that in the last minutes of their life is always stuck in my memory. Being able to put Charles Halm in prison for the rest of his life was very satisfying.
There's parts of every homicide that you always have with you. The part about this case, about Bernadette Myers' death and her murder that stuck with me the most was the courage of her family, even at their time of grief, to help us with the investigation. Without their help, we wouldn't have been able to go forward.
I try not to think about how she died. I like to think about how she lived. Bernadette was so funny, and we laughed all the time. She was our aunt, she was a sister, she was a best friend. Sunday morning, we were all just sitting there visiting. And Bernadette was sitting next to me. And she looked me right in the eyes and told me why she loved me. It doesn't get any better than that.
I've been to a lot of crime scenes, but I've never seen one like this. The brutalness of it.
A murder of excessive cruelty.
What she must have gone through.
You stabbed the girl twice in the neck, and those are the fatal wounds. Why are you poking at her 54 more times?
Was this a sexual homicide? Absolutely.
The victim of an obsessive killer.
I could see where a female of her size could have killed her.
You're beginning to think that there's something wrong with this guy and that he could be your killer. It was just weird. It was just strange.
He was on his toes, but he was the only person that could have committed that crime.
The truth will be revealed.
He who solves the crime is the person that looks, relooks, and looks again. It never ends until you find your killer.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. On Florida's first coast sits the quiet community of Jacksonville Beach, enjoyed by many for its surf, sand, and sunshine.
Jacksonville Beach is kind of a bedroom community for Jacksonville.
We have a huge mix of both young people and your older folks that are retired.
It's not real touristy like other parts of Florida, which is actually fine with the people that live here.
We're a small community here in Jacksonville Beach, so we don't have the really serious crime. I mean, you have your auto burglaries, you have your occasional house burglary, maybe 1 or 2 murders a year. But I mean, we aren't overrun with that stuff.
It's the Thanksgiving holiday, and Jacksonville Beach residents are gathering with their families. But that sense of celebration and security is about to be shattered.
A Jacksonville Beach woman, Corey Parker, was due to go to work at the restaurant that she worked at in Atlantic Beach on Friday. And when she didn't show up that morning, the manager said, well, there's got to be something wrong. So she sent the cook to check on her. When he got there, around 11, she didn't answer. And he walked around the apartment trying to look in the windows. And when he did, he saw a bloody body part.
I got the call from our dispatch that the patrol was working an active suicide. So I told my wife, my 2 kids, I'd be back, hopefully shortly. So I proceeded to Corey Parker's apartment. I've been to a lot of crime scenes, but I've never seen one like this. The brutalness of it and what she must have gone through with all of the stab wounds from the navel up to her throat and even the ones on her face. Absolutely, it was a homicide.
Jacksonville Beach Police Department detectives William Carlisle and Eddie Bounds are assigned to the case.
Corey was covered in blood. There was an extreme amount of blood on the bed. The bed sheets were in disarray.
The victim is Corey Parker, a 25-year-old college student, originally from Rochester, New York.
Corey could just light up the room. Her smile was as big as the day. I call her a social butterfly. She was very, open, very outgoing, so it was easy for her to make friends. I always feel like if I had anything that I needed to talk about, it was always with Corey.
Corey Parker left her home to come here to Florida from New York. She was a college student working 2 jobs. By all accounts, her physical appearance, her demeanor, her personality was easy to like.
She was just full of energy and vim and vitality and just a really nice person. And, so it makes you wonder, who would be so enraged that they would want to take her life.
To find Corey Parker's killer, detectives must piece together the last 24 hours of her life, starting with the crime scene.
They counted over 100 stab wounds on Corey's body, some of them in multiple places.
She had defensive marks, wounds on her arms and hands. She had 2 severe wounds to her throat that were the fatal wounds. There were also 54 stab wounds to her chest and abdomen that were post-mortem after she died. You stabbed the girl twice in the neck, and those are the fatal wounds. Why are you poking at her 54 more times after she's dead? It's indicative of overkill.
When you see the type of brutality that's seen in this case, over 100 stab wounds, there's 2 schools of thought on this. Number 1, this is extreme rage. Someone knew the victim and just keeps stabbing because they hate them that much. On the flip side, there's research my colleagues and I have carried out to confirm that more than 15 stab wounds involving a female is inherently sexual. There is a disorder called picorism, which is sexual gratification obtained, as disturbing as this sounds, from repeatedly penetrating a human body with some type of stabbing instrument.
She was obviously posed on the bed and her legs were spread. For her to be put in that position and to be laid there and rest like that, there's no other reason than wanting to shock somebody that found her.
There was a pair of panties. They appeared to have been taken off of her, so it did look like she was wearing those when she went to bed. The evidence technician examined those panties, and they were able to locate a Caucasian head hair, which had a root bulb on the end of it.
Finding hair at a crime scene in itself is not significant unless you have that rich source of DNA, which is in the root of the hair. Without that, hairs can be substantively similar, but it cannot be conclusively linked to a single offender.
Investigators go over the rest of the apartment, looking for any evidence that could lead them to Corey's killer.
There were finger marks on the windowsill, and it appeared that someone had put their hand there to lower himself out of the window after killing Corey. But there was no sign of any ridge detail, fingerprints, so to speak. So you can assume from that the suspect was wearing gloves. They came prepared because they knew that they were trying to avoid being detected.
Corey's body was found at 11 a.m. on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. But to narrow down her time of death, detectives need to determine when she was last seen alive. They start with her friend and neighbor, Ashley.
The last time I saw Corey was the night before Thanksgiving. She was talking about meeting her friends for Thanksgiving and taking over some pies that she was gonna bake. So she started baking her pies. We had a beer.
Ashley was able to tell us that around 5 or 6 o'clock that she and Corey were interacting together back and forth in the apartment.
After all of that, she was getting ready to go out that night, and that was the last time I saw her.
We learned that Corey had baked the pies so she could attend an orphan's Thanksgiving for people that did not have family in town. She didn't show up for that party, so her friends thought that maybe she got a better offer and decided not to come. Time of death is very hard to pinpoint. They can do it on TV. They can tell you it's the person died at 11 o'clock, but in reality, you really can't do that. So that party helped us fill that immediate timeline prior to her death.
Detectives put Corey Parker's time of death somewhere between 6 p.m. on Wednesday, when she last spoke to Ashley, and 6 p.m. on Thursday, when she didn't show up for her friend's Thanksgiving dinner. Detectives now canvass the neighborhood to see if anyone noticed anything suspicious during that time.
We asked, do you remember who might have been in the neighborhood seen walking around, or suspicious cars, things like that.
Many people are away for Thanksgiving, but there are a few around, among them a 17-year-old neighbor.
We spoke to this guy, Robert. He was just another person that lived in the area near Corey. He said nothing out of the ordinary had happened or been seen in that area at her apartment complex. Said that he was working and apparently was sleeping, he thought, and didn't know what she looked like, didn't know where she lived at, other than we were seeing the police tape around her apartment. He said that's where I figured she lived at because that was all the police activity.
The canvas appears to be pointing in the direction of a dead end until police speak to another neighbor.
He said he'd seen somebody in the back, which would have been the east portion of Corey's apartment. There's an alleyway that leads to a set of convenience stores. And it was that area that he said he saw a guy looking in her back bedroom window.
When we use the term peeping Tom, we usually refer to somebody who's spying on people or looking in on people, say through their windows or otherwise. But they're engaging in this sort of behavior because it's sexually arousing for them. The majority of people who conduct these hands-off sex offenses don't escalate into hands-on offenders, but it can happen. They can become people who would rape or otherwise engage in a violent sexual assault.
Could the actions of a peeping Tom have escalated into the violent murder of Corey Parker?
We started, really hitting that hard, setting up surveillance teams in case he came back. And it's common for people to come back to a crime scene and relive that moment. So we sat up many nights to find somebody or anybody that would lead us to Corey Parker's killer.
Detectives Carlisle and Bounds have honed in on their first lead in Corey Parker's murder, a peeping Tom recently spotted in her apartment complex.
We were in surveillance mode at that point, looking for any valuable information, but we really didn't have anything specific to go on.
With the Peeping Tom lead going nowhere, detectives shift the focus of their investigation.
Rule of thumb in homicide investigation is to talk to an intimate partner, current or former boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, and look at what were the dynamics of this relationship. What were any strains or stresses on the relationship, financial, romantic?
Corey had recently started dating David Tippins, just 3 weeks before her murder.
I remember meeting David one time when he came to pick her up. She really liked him and thought that maybe she could have more feelings for him and that she could possibly be falling in love with him.
Police called David down to the station for questioning.
Investigators got the sense that David was pretty shaken by Corey's murder. He was very upset by it.
He really liked her a lot, and they had been together a lot during the previous weeks before she was murdered.
Corey had spent the night at David's place on Monday night before Thanksgiving and then took him to the airport the next morning. He had gone to Pensacola for the Thanksgiving weekend to be with his family.
We obviously wanted to verify that, and he was able to provide us with plane tickets, both going and coming, that indicated that he was out of town and was in fact not here during the time that Corey was murdered.
The detectives know from talking to David that he was unable to reach Corey on Thanksgiving Day. And he left a message and she didn't call back.
We have our answering machine, checked everything in there. So he was, in our opinion, was telling us the truth.
So I think there was a reasonable suspicion that she was dead by then, on Thanksgiving morning.
Having established that David had no opportunity to murder Corey, he's eliminated as a suspect. Detectives are now pursuing a new theory that Corey was murdered after 6 p.m. on Wednesday and before David's call around 11 a.m. on Thanksgiving Thursday. They now focus their attention on the timeline, specifically Wednesday night, when Corey was going out for the evening.
We're just looking for anyone that is close to Corey or that had contact with Corey on Wednesday night. And one of the people that said, hey, you know, Corey was my friend and I was with her on Wednesday night was Tiffany.
Seeming desperate to help the investigation, Corey's friend Tiffany Zena volunteers to come down to the station.
Tiffany described her relationship with Corey as one of very, very close, really good friends. She said a couple of times that she loved Corey.
Tiffany said they were at the Ritz Bar. The Ritz Bar is a very well-known hangout of young adults, professional adults that work all day and they end up there. It's the place to be if you're somebody. That night, there was Corey, Tiffany, and there was at least 3 or 4 of her girlfriends.
Tiffany explains that she was with Corey all evening at the Ritz Bar until they left at 1:30 a.m. in their separate cars. And there's more.
One of the things Tiffany tells police about that night was that Corey had gotten into a bit of an altercation with a mutual acquaintance named Gregory at the Ritz Bar that night.
Tiffany made it sound like it was something significant with Gregory. And so we wanted to know what he had to say about that.
Gregory told the police that everything was fine that night. He told them he didn't know Corey that well and that, you know, nothing out of the ordinary happened.
He bumped into her or something and she turned around and looked at him and it was just really nothing according to him.
When police talked to Corey's other friends that were at the Ritz that night, they validated Gregory's story.
As far as we knew, there was nothing to indicate that Greg had a problem with Corey, but Tiffany made it sound more like it was something significant. So it appeared that she was actually lying about it, and our suspicions were heightened.
According to Corey's friends, Tiffany exaggerated how close she and Corey were, that they were not as close as she described.
I got the sense that she wanted that relationship to be more than Corey sounded like from her friends. Tiffany was one that, and not to use the word alpha, but was a very front, confronting person.
Corey's friends believe Tiffany may have had a sexual interest in Corey, and that kind of got the attention of police because here you had a crime scene where the victim was posed sexually, but there was no evidence of a rape.
So often in these kinds of killings, the woman was sexually assaulted, either before her death or after, or while she was being killed. In this case, we know that she wasn't, and that's unusual. And for investigators, that would have been a really important part of the motive. Why did this happen? And what enjoyment did the killer get out of her death?
So you look at that and you try to evaluate, okay, whether or not there could have been some one-sided love interest on the part of Tiffany, and that maybe she killed Corey as some sort of a jilted lover, or maybe she was upset that Corey had found this new boyfriend and was dating him and had pushed her out.
Having established a motive, detectives theorize that when Tiffany and Corey left the bar together at 1:30 a.m., albeit in their own cars, Tiffany had the opportunity to follow Corey home and murder her.
Tiffany appeared to have knowledge of the crime scene that she really, in our opinion, should not have had. We learned that she knew details of what happened to Corey. Where did she get that information from? How does she know what happened to Corey if she wasn't there herself? Can she be the killer?
Tiffany's a big person, much in stature, much bigger than Corey. And I'm thinking it would have taken somebody much bigger to overpower Corey and to have controlled her in that confined area in the bedroom. So when Tiffany came into the picture, I could see where a female of her size could have been the one that killed Corey Parker.
Detectives are closing in on a prime suspect in Corey Parker's murder, her friend, Tiffany.
Tiffany's interest in Corey seemed to be a little over the top from your normal friendship, so we definitely wanted to look at that. And that's what investigators are focusing on.
They zero in on the end of the evening at 1:30 a.m. when Tiffany says she and Corey left the Ritz bar in their separate cars.
Tiffany, Corey, and other group of friends left the Ritz, going home. Well, Tiffany stated that she was taking a friend home in Ponte Vedra. Corey went to her residence. Tiffany would later tell her friends that she was going to spend the night with Corey. But Tiffany said while en route to Corey's house, she called Corey on his cell phone saying, if it got late, coming from Ponte Vedra, and I changed my mind. I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to home, go to bed. I'll see you tomorrow.
We pulled Corey's phone records, and there was no record of Tiffany's call on Corey's phone records.
Detectives confront Tiffany with this information.
She said, I was very intoxicated, and she said, I was speed dialing all of my friends, and she said, I thought I talked to Corey, but maybe I was talking to someone else. And then she told me that she went by the apartment. It was late, it was about 4 in the morning, and that the apartment was dark, and she didn't get an answer to the door, so she went on home. We strongly feel that based on the condition of the body when it was found on Friday and the circumstances of her death, we believe that she was most likely killed in the hours following her immediate return to her house on early Thursday morning.
Detectives believe Tiffany had the opportunity to kill Corey and dig deeper into her alibi.
She said she took a friend home to Ponte Vedra. But other than that, nobody saw her come home that night. Nobody confirmed that they heard her come in. So Tiffany didn't have an airtight alibi.
Tiffany's lack of a bona fide alibi puts detectives onto a different theory.
We believe that she had come on to Corey inside the apartment, and Corey put up a struggle. And Tiffany didn't want that to come out, that she was gay or that she had wanted a relationship more than Corey did. And so Tiffany killed Corey Parker.
Tiffany had the opportunity and a possible motive, but they need to place her in Corey's apartment at the time of the murder. If they can connect her DNA to the hair found in Corey's underwear, then they can prove she's the killer.
The problem was we couldn't talk to her because she had lawyered up, so we couldn't get samples of her DNA. So we had to secure a search warrant.
When DNA is subpoenaed, it means it's ordered by the court. So there is no alternative. It has to be provided.
This is usually done after other attempts have been made to obtain that DNA, because as soon as you serve them with that subpoena, they know right away now that they are in play as a potential suspect. And you hope that they comply with the order, but they could also jump on a plane.
We went to serve a search warrant, and she had moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She picked up all of her belongings and moved in a real quick, hastily move, which to me drew more attention to her. A lot of, with me, red flags started flying. We had to actually fly to Louisiana and interview her in Baton Rouge.
You've got a court order commanding you to do this, so if you have to hold her down and draw her blood, you're going to do that.
But when the results come back from the lab, Tiffany's DNA isn't a match, and she is eliminated as a suspect.
We really believe that she was a suspect because she knew details of the crime scene. Well, we learned that she was a bartender at a local restaurant, and the firefighters that responded to the scene had been in the restaurant and had been telling her what they observed there because they knew she knew Corey.
Tiffany's behavior is really hard to explain. As murder investigations go, she acted the part of a potentially guilty person just by her behavior.
Could be that, Tiffany wanted attention, or maybe she actually did want to help solve the case. But there's a very strong theme of fantasy here, and maybe that was just to have a more in-depth relationship than what's actually the case.
Determined to find Corey's killer, detectives expand the scope of their investigation to the restaurant where she worked.
Eric Eli was an employee that was infatuated with Corey. She would make complaints about this guy. There's a back area that they go to smoke at in the restaurant. Well, other employees would say that when Corey was there, Eric Eli, he would jump up on the wall and start doing push-ups.
He would ask her out. Corey, being Corey, would try to let him down gently and be nice to him. But from all accounts, she had no interest in dating him. And he couldn't really take no for an answer.
Corey told Eric that she did not date coworkers. And Eric's response to that was, well, I'll quit my job. That sort of piques your curiosity. So, yes, we were interested in Eric at that point.
With Eric now in their crosshairs, detectives bring him down to the station for questioning.
There's a couple things that get the detectives' attention. The most noticeable are these marks, like injuries on around his hands, that looked as if someone had scratched or clawed at him. He explained those away, or attempted to. It's just part of his job.
Eric basically denied killing Corey, and then he eerily gave details that were similar to what actually occurred in the crime scene. He made some statements that, yeah, if I would have done it, I didn't do it now, but if I would have done it, I would have cut her throat, I would have raped her.
Eric talked about how he would have stabbed her multiple times. He would have left the body in the condition that it was. And it was actually very disturbing.
I mean, why did he need to volunteer that? And a normal person, to me, in a normal state of mind, would not come in and give us that kind of detail. And so, yeah, you're beginning to think that there's something wrong with this guy and that he could be your killer.
Detectives are zeroing in on Corey Parker's coworker, Eric Eli, as her killer, and theorize he was motivated by rejection.
Eric, to me, stands out as right away a very viable suspect. I mean, here is someone who has been rejected by the victim. Here is someone who places great erotic value on destructive and violent activities, essentially rape fantasies. We understand that these fantasies typically don't stay fantasies and that they could be actually taking the step to commit murder.
But detectives need to prove Eric had the opportunity to kill Corey and look into his alibi.
He told us on Thanksgiving Day, he made her a Thanksgiving dinner and then called her to invite her over. Of course, she didn't answer the phone, but, you know, just that he would go to that length was just weird. It was just strange. But is he off his rocker, or did he actually do it?
That could have been him throwing them off the trail, creating an alibi for himself.
So you have to go to your physical evidence. You want to find out whether any of his head hairs or pubic hairs are on the sheets or on her body. Is his hair the forcibly removed head hair in the panties?
Eric agrees to give a DNA sample, but when the results come in, they turn the entire investigation on its head.
There was no match on any of it. I mean, there's no physical evidence match to him, no fingerprints in the apartment, none of his hairs were on her bed, none of his hairs were in her panties. So, you know, you can't put him there. And you can't say that he killed her just based on his crazy statements. So I wrote him off as far as the suspect goes. I mean, you just don't want to see these things go unsolved. And so you dig and you keep on, because he who solves the crime is the person that looks, relooks, and relooks. And you just keep digging. And it never ends until you find your killer.
Detectives are under enormous pressure to solve Corey's murder and put Jacksonville Beach at ease.
There was a lot of fear in the community. I knew a lot of women that lived alone, and a lot of them got really fearful after this happened.
We were definitely afraid. You know, the whole town was just on pins and needles, just wondering who it could be, why, and if it was going to happen again. It was just crazy.
Corey Parker's case has gone cold, and now the Parker family is offering a $20,000 reward for information leading to an arrest.
Wanted posters went up around the beach with Corey's picture and the reward amount and a number to call.
The reward campaign nets some responses, and as news tips roll in, one in particular catches the detective's attention.
These 4 individuals, they were all workers at a barbecue restaurant in Jacksonville Beach, and they started talking about the case.
One of the tips was from a coworker of Robert Denny. Denny had worked at the local barbecue restaurant, and this particular coworker recalled that around the time of the murder, that Robert Denny was acting a little strange. When the detectives looked up Robert Denny in their database, they discovered he was one of the neighbors that they talked to right after the murder. He told them he didn't see anything, didn't know anything, and nothing about him at that time raised any red flags. He was a 17-year-old kid living at the beach with his sister.
We were able to find out from the sister that he was bringing pornography into the house. He had some nocturnal habits that she wasn't real pleased with. Robert had been what she called sort of a night creeper. He would stand outside the residence at night smoking a cigarette and would actually try to peep in her windows. And so she kicked him out.
She gave the detectives information about Robert Denny's brother, who, as it so happened, was in prison in Texas for stabbing a woman 86 times. And that was eerily similar to what had happened to Corey.
And you start thinking, well, is Robert trying to outdo his brother?
It makes you wonder, what's the role of nature and nurture here? Could the same factors be at play for Robert as with his brother? That being said, biology isn't destiny.
Detectives go looking for Robert Denny at the address where he was living at the time of Corey's murder, but he's long gone.
We were able to take a look around and see that both from inside and outside that Robert had a full view of Corey's apartment. So he was able to look out his bedroom window and see Corey coming or going. If she had her blinds open, he could see right into her kitchen and living room area. We talked to the manager of the barbecue restaurant and also another coworker. And they told us that they had both been over to his apartment on separate occasions, and he had referenced the girl downstairs, Corey. He had been watching her.
There were a lot of arrows pointing in Robert Denny's direction at that point, but the detectives still didn't have really anything tying him to this crime. There was no direct evidence that Robert Denny had anything to do with this.
With Robert Denny now the prime suspect in Corey Parker's murder, detectives scour his background and learn he's in Easton, Maryland.
He had met this 52-year-old woman online in a chat room type situation, and she had told him via email she represented herself to him as a 25-year-old girl. He represented himself to her as a 25-year-old male. She said, well, if you're ever in Easton, drop by. Well, in January, freezing cold, she opens the door one night to a knock on the door, and there he's standing in a pair of jean shorts and a t-shirt. So she lets him in. Well, come to find out, she let him move in. We contacted the Easton police, and so we come up with this story that the police chief's son up there in Easton was injured as a result of a fight, and that Robert matched the general description of the suspect in that case and asked him for a sample of his DNA.
With their plan in motion, detectives get Robert Denny to come to the station.
So we asked to get a DNA sample from him to compare to the evidence in that case. And he said, I don't decline, but I'd like to talk to my attorney first. So we gave him a bottle of water, see if he'll drink from that. If he does, we get his saliva, and we get his DNA that way. He looked at the bottle of water, he took it in his hand, but he never drank from it. Then we took him for a break out in the garage to have him smoke cigarettes. And when he was done smoking the cigarette, we were hoping that he'd drop the cigarette in the ashtray and we could go get it. But he took the butt and put it behind his ear. He wouldn't put it out in the ashtray. So, who does that? Nobody does that.
Police use all reasonable techniques to secretly obtain that DNA, whether by following somebody around hoping that they discard a beverage container or a cigarette butt or what have you, or by checking their garbage. This is the unglamorous area of police work that solves cases.
Intent on securing a sample of Robert Denny's DNA, detectives take a different tack.
We had generated these forms saying, hey, I, Robert Denny, have been asked for my DNA sample. I declined to give this sample. And then we were going to get him to sign it, date it, and then put it in an envelope and lick it and seal it. And then we'd have his DNA on the envelope. So then we did the forms, asked him to sign that. Well, he looked at it, read it, and then he put down there, I don't decline. I would just like to speak to my attorney. So we asked him, okay, well, how about sealing that in the envelope?
He told us, nice try. I know what you're trying to do. You're not going to get my DNA. So he was on his toes. He was thinking at all times.
He outsmarted us there. And so we knew he was savvy, and I was even more convinced at that point that he was our guy because, he's avoiding every effort to get his DNA sample. But, I was committed to solving this case, and I wasn't leaving Easton, Maryland until I got a sample of his DNA.
After a number of dead ends in their investigation, detectives are closing in on Corey Parker's killer, but they need physical evidence to prove their case.
The last day there, we were doing a surveillance of Robert's business.
He worked at a computer store there in downtown Easton, and we were able to watch him as he would come out about every 40, 45 minutes, smoke a cigarette.
We were waiting for the instance where if he would leave a cigarette, they would extract the DNA from the cigarette. We never did. He would break the filters off and put the filter in his pocket, throw the tobacco down to the ground.
But unbeknownst to us, he had a uncontrollable spitting habit where he would arbitrarily just spit on the ground. And we kind of noted where the spit went in the parking lot. So he then turns around, walks into the computer store, and then we walk up there and we see the spit. And so I took my Q-tips and went up there and swabbed 7 different areas. Let those dry, packaged them up, drove them over to the FBI lab in DC. 2 weeks later, the FBI DNA analyst called me and said that he had identified Robert Denny's DNA from the spit to the hair in Corey's panties. He was also able to identify Robert Denny's DNA as matching the blood from the inside lip of the kitchen sink, which put him in the apartment. So we were jumping for joy at that point.
He was one in hundreds of billions of people that were eliminated. He was the only person that could have committed that crime.
Detectives proceed with arresting Robert Denny.
I am Detective Sergeant Billy Carlisle from the Jacksonville Beach, Florida Police Department. Are you able?
He's a sick nuts.
Okay, sure. Take
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh.
He was hyperventilating, and when we told him he was under arrest, he says, for what? And we said, for a murder in Jacksonville Beach. I'd like to give you this opportunity to explain to me what happened.
What happened? No, just wait.
His face went white and all the blood ran out of his face. He denied killing Corey.
And I'm looking you in the eyes and I tell you, swear to God, I didn't do this.
Robert, you don't want to be man enough to...
No, I am a man. I'm a hell of a man, and I'm honest, and I tell the truth, and I'm telling you the truth right now that I didn't do this.
And he stuck to that and never gave an admission. But we didn't need it.
Investigators are now able to piece together the final 24 hours of Corey Parker's life.
1 o'clock, she was baking pies with her neighbor, Ashley, most of the afternoon till about 6. At 10 p.m., she meets up with Tiffany at the Ritz bar, and they kind of hang out there till about 1:30 in the morning. Corey drives home. Police believe that Robert Denny was already in her apartment when she got home, that he had snuck in after she left, probably through that kitchen window.
We believe that she was killed in those hours immediately following the time period when she returned home and locked herself inside her apartment. Woman's worst nightmare. You're inside your own apartment, locked inside, feeling safe. You go to crawl in your bed, and then out of the clear blue, someone jumps in bed with you and starts attacking you. It was apparent that she fought the suspect valiantly before she died.
No doubt about it. Each one of those stabs is actually a surrogate sex act. Was there a conventional rape? No. Was this a sexual homicide? Absolutely.
Robert Denny is convicted of first-degree murder on April 28, 2005. He is sentenced to life in prison.
Robert Denny does not look the part of a killer. You know, he was a young, clean-cut teenager, but clearly perception isn't everything.
He's a sociopath, you know, he just doesn't care for life, and it doesn't matter to him that she's dead, and I don't think he regrets it to this date other than the fact that he's locked up, can't get out of prison. It's probably the most significant case of my career, 43 years in law enforcement so far and still going. You know, it was a lot of hard work and a lot of time and effort, but the end result for the family and for, you know, the citizens of this community is unmeasurable.
call my daughter every night since then. My daughter's a beautiful young lady that's doing exactly what Corey does. She's going to school, she's holding down jobs, she has her own apartment. It hit me as a father, that could have been my daughter. We got our guy off the street that could have been involved in many more homicides.
My favorite memory of Corey is probably her smile. To keep her memory alive is to talk about her, to talk about her story, to talk about the way that she lit up a room. And I won't stop talking about her. I think she, in the small amount of time that she was here and the amount of people that she affected in a positive way, that story won't die.